I woke up to the sound of shuffling near my bed. Through half-closed eyes, I watched my daughter's husband Josh quietly searching through my nightstand drawer, clearly looking for something specific. The safe keys. I could have stopped him right there, but something told me to stay silent and see what would happen next. When he finally found the keys and opened my safe, Josh let out a gasp of pure shock. What he saw inside that safe, he will never, ever forget. And neither would I, because that moment changed everything between our families forever. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. It had been a typical Sunday evening. Amanda and Josh came over for dinner with their 2 kids, as they did every week for the past 8 years. My kitchen island, the one I'd custom built last spring with my own hands because a contractor was too expensive, was still cluttered with the serving dishes from our family feast. The sound of children's cartoons drifted from my living room, playing on the 75-inch TV I'd surprised them with last Christmas, the one that cost me nearly my entire tax refund. Josh had seemed distracted all evening, constantly checking his phone between bites of the homemade lasagna I'd spent hours perfecting. Amanda kept mentioning their upcoming vacation to Mexico, casually dropping hints about how the resort fees were higher than expected. I'd smiled and nodded, already mentally checking my credit card balance to see if I could help cover the difference. It wouldn't be the first time. After they left around 9, I'd tackled the cleanup alone, scraping plates, hand-washing my grandmother's china that I only brought out for family dinners, organizing the leftovers into containers I knew they'd take home tomorrow. My back ached from standing for hours cooking, but seeing my grandchildren's faces light up over my famous chocolate chip cookies made every twinge worthwhile. I'd finally crawled into bed around 11, my prescription heating pad already warming the sheets where I'd placed it for my chronic back pain, pain that had worsened since I'd helped Josh move furniture into their new house last month. The bottle of expensive pain medication sat unopened on my nightstand. I'd been rationing pills to make them last longer after spending my medication budget on the kids' school supplies. That's when I heard the familiar sound of my front door opening. The spare key I'd given them years ago, back when I thought it was for emergencies or times when they might need to check on me. Now, lying in the darkness, I heard Josh's distinctive footsteps on my ceramic tile, the expensive flooring I'd installed 2 years ago, hoping it would make family gatherings feel more welcoming. He moved through my house with the confidence of someone who'd been here countless times, navigating around the new sectional sofa I'd bought specifically so the whole family could watch movies together. The footsteps approached my bedroom door. Through the gap beneath my door, I could see the glow of his phone's flashlight. My pulse quickened, but instinct kept me motionless, barely breathing. The door opened with barely a whisper. Josh stepped inside, moving with practiced stealth toward my nightstand. In the pale light, I watched him carefully slide open my top drawer, the one containing my reading glasses, my daily vitamins, and the small brass key to my bedroom safe. His fingers moved methodically through my personal items until he found what he was searching for. Every fiber of my being wanted to sit up and demand an explanation. But something deeper than curiosity paralyzed me. Some primal instinct at this moment held significance, that whatever was about to unfold would reveal truths I needed to witness. Josh crept to the corner where my fireproof safe sat discreetly behind my antique dresser. I'd purchased it 3 years ago to protect important family documents, some inherited jewelry, and other irreplaceable items. The electronic lock beeped softly as he entered the combination, and then a sharp, audible gasp. Josh actually stumbled backward, his phone nearly slipping from his trembling hands. In the dim glow, I could see his face frozen in complete shock, perhaps even terror. He stood there shaking, staring into that safe as if he'd seen something that shattered his entire understanding of our family. I couldn't pretend to sleep any longer. Slowly, I sat up in bed and reached for my bedside lamp. The soft click seemed to echo through the room like a gunshot. "Find what you were looking for, Josh." He spun around so fast he nearly lost his balance, his face draining of all color. The safe door hung open behind him, and I could see his hands were still trembling. For a moment, he just stood there like a deer caught in headlights, opening and closing his mouth without any words coming out. I I can explain, he finally stammered, but his voice cracked on every syllable. Can you? I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my joints protesting after lying still for so long. Because I'm genuinely curious what explanation you have for breaking into my home at midnight and going through my personal safe. Josh's eyes darted around the room as if looking for an escape route. Amanda and I, we were worried about you, your finances, your health. We thought maybe if we could see your important documents, we could help you organize things better. The lie was so weak, so transparently desperate, that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Worried about my finances? I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 68 years in my aching bones. Josh, in the past 5 years alone, I've given you and Amanda over $180,000. I paid for your wedding reception when your original venue canceled. I covered Amanda's medical bills when she had complications with her second pregnancy. I co-signed your mortgage when your credit wasn't enough. I bought your children's school clothes, their Christmas presents, their summer camp fees. Each item I listed seemed to make him shrink smaller. That's different. You wanted to help. You offered. I offered because I love my daughter and my grandchildren. My voice remained calm, but I felt something cold and hard crystallizing in my chest. But tell me, Josh, what exactly did you see in my safe that made you gasp like you'd seen a ghost? He glanced back at the open safe, then quickly looked away. Nothing, just papers. I was surprised there were so many documents. Another lie. I walked over to the safe and looked inside, seeing exactly what had shocked him so profoundly. There, in neat manila folders, was my entire financial documentation for the past decade. Bank statements showing every transfer I'd made to them, receipts for every purchase, loan documents where I'd put my house up as collateral for their business ventures, and most damning of all, the folder labeled Family Investment Tracking, where I'd meticulously recorded every single dollar I'd given them, every favor, every sacrifice. But that wasn't what had made him gasp. Josh, I said quietly, pulling out the folder that I knew had terrified him. You saw the life insurance policies, didn't you? His face went completely white. I don't know what you're talking about. The life insurance policies where Amanda is the sole beneficiary, the ones worth $850,000, the ones that would pay out if anything happened to me. I opened the folder and pulled out the documents. These policies that you and Amanda have been asking me about for the past 2 years, wondering when I plan to update them, suggesting I increase the coverage for the family's security. Josh's breathing became shallow and rapid. We never. What scared you, Josh, was seeing the amendment I had notarized last month. I pulled out the single sheet of paper that had clearly sent him into shock, the one where I changed Amanda from sole beneficiary to splitting everything equally between my grandchildren, with the money going into a trust they can't access until they're 30. The silence that followed was deafening. Josh stood there, his mouth working silently, his face a map of guilt and panic. You thought I was a naive old fool, didn't you? I continued, my voice still eerily calm. Someone you could manipulate and drain dry, and then collect a nice insurance payout when I was gone. But what you found tonight was proof that I've been documenting everything. Every conversation, every request for money, every time you've pushed me to increase my life insurance. That's not true, he finally exploded, but his protest sounded hollow even to his own ears. We love you. We've never thought about anything happening to you. I looked at this man who had sat at my dinner table for 8 years, who had eaten my food, accepted my money, and apparently counted down the days until my death would make him and my daughter wealthy. Get out of my house, Josh. Please, let me explain. Get out. Now. And tell Amanda that our weekly family dinners are canceled indefinitely. After Josh left, I sat in my bedroom for hours, staring at the open safe and processing what had just happened. The silence felt different now, not empty, but pregnant with possibility. For the first time in years, I wasn't mentally calculating how much money I could spare for Amanda's next emergency. I walked through my house in the early morning light, seeing everything with new eyes. The hardwood floors I'd refinished after helping Josh with his failed restaurant venture. $15,000 down the drain when it closed 6 months later. The new water heater I'd installed last winter when theirs unexpectedly broke right before Christmas, another $3,200. The guest bedroom I'd redecorated specifically for my grandchildren's sleepovers, complete with bunk beds and Disney-themed everything. $2,800 that I'd charged to my credit card because my savings were depleted from their previous crisis. Every corner of my home told the same story. A man who had given everything over and over to people who saw him as nothing more than a convenient source of funds. I made myself coffee in the expensive espresso machine I'd bought after Amanda mentioned how much she missed good coffee, the machine they used every Sunday but never offered to help pay for. As I sat at my kitchen counter, memories flooded back with painful clarity. The time Josh had borrowed $8,000 for car repairs, then showed up the next week with a brand new motorcycle. The Christmas when Amanda had cried about not being able to afford gifts for the children, so I'd spent my entire Social Security check on presents, only to see photos on social media of their expensive vacation to Cabo just weeks later. The countless dinners where they'd discussed their financial struggles while eating meals I'd paid for, cooked in cookware I'd bought, at a table I'd furnished. Around noon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I hadn't seen in months. Frank Rodriguez, my old neighbor from when I lived across town. We'd stayed in touch sporadically since I'd moved. Well, look who's still alive. Frank's voice had that familiar gruff warmth. How's retirement treating you, you old bastard? Can't complain. Still breathing, still drinking coffee that's too expensive for my own good. I found myself almost smiling despite everything. What's got you calling in the middle of a Tuesday? Don't tell me you're finally ready to admit I was right about those Mets. Ha! Fat chance. Frank's laugh died quickly, though. Actually, I'm calling because, hell, I don't even know how to say this. You remember my son Michael? The one with the fancy MBA who's always got some new business idea? Yeah, the one who borrowed money for that food truck venture that never happened. That's the one. Well, turns out he's been... Christ, this is embarrassing. He's been stealing from me, forging my signature on checks, cleaning out accounts I didn't even know he had access to. I nearly dropped my coffee cup. Frank, what the hell are you talking about? Found out yesterday when my bank called about an overdraft. Turns out my boy's been playing bank teller with my money for over a year. We're talking 40 grand, maybe more. My retirement fund, gone. The money I saved for my grandkids' college, gone. Jesus, Frank, have you confronted him? Oh, I confronted him all right. You know what he said? Dad, I was going to pay it back. I just needed some capital to get my consulting business off the ground. Like I'm some kind of investor instead of his father he just robbed blind. Frank's voice cracked slightly and I could hear the pain behind his anger. The worst part? His wife, Jennifer, she's been in on it. Calling me yesterday, crying, saying they'll make it right, but then in the same breath asking if I could help them with their mortgage payment next month because the kids need stability. They've got some serious nerve. You know what really gets me, though? Frank continued, his voice getting stronger, angrier. All those times Michael would come over, asking about my will, my insurance policies, always real casual like, you know? Dad, you should really update your beneficiaries, make sure everything's in order. I thought he was being responsible, looking out for his old man. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Last month he brought over some insurance agent buddy of his. Guy tried to sell me on doubling my life insurance coverage. Said it was smart planning for the family's future. Now I'm sitting here wondering if my own son was calculating how much I'd be worth dead. The phone felt heavy in my hand. That's twisted? Yeah, that's one way to put it. The other way is that I raised a kid who sees his father as a retirement plan. Frank was quiet for a moment. I keep thinking, was I that blind? Were there signs I missed? Or did I just want to believe that my boy loved me more than my bank account? I found myself gripping the phone tighter, thinking about Josh's shocked face when he'd seen those insurance documents. What are you going to do? Hell if I know. Part of me wants to call the cops and let them sort it out. But he's still my son, you know? And those grandkids, they didn't ask for parents who are thieves. But I can't keep being their personal ATM either. Frank, can I ask you something? When did this all start? The money requests, I mean. Looking back, it started small about 3 years ago. Little emergencies here and there, car repairs, medical bills, stuff that seemed legitimate. But it ramped up after, as Frank paused. Actually, now that I think about it, it got worse after my heart attack 2 years ago. When I was in the hospital, Michael was real helpful, taking care of my bills, organizing my paperwork. That's probably when he figured out how to access my accounts. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us processing the implications. Why are you telling me this? I asked finally. Frank sighed heavily. Because you're the only person I know who might understand. We're both old guys who worked our asses off our whole lives, saved every penny we could, and tried to do right by our kids. And look where it got us. We talked for another hour. Frank's situation was worse than mine. Outright theft versus manipulation. But the emotional betrayal was identical. The crushing realization that the people you'd loved and trusted most had been systematically using you. After we hung up, something had crystallized in my mind. This wasn't just about getting my money back or protecting my assets. This was about patterns, about cycles of abuse that would continue with my grandchildren if I didn't break them now. I drove to my old workplace downtown, the accounting firm where I'd spent 35 years before retirement. My former colleague, Patricia Williams, now ran the forensic accounting division. I didn't call ahead. I just showed up with 3 boxes of documentation. I need your professional opinion on something, I told her, setting the boxes on her conference table. But first, I need you to understand that this isn't just about money. It's about people who believed I would never fight back. As I laid out the evidence, bank statements, loan documents, receipts, even photos showing expensive purchases they'd made right after receiving my help, Patricia's expression grew increasingly grim. This is textbook financial elder abuse, she said finally. The escalating requests, the emotional manipulation, the way they isolated you from questioning their needs, and this pattern with the life insurance discussions. She shook her head. You realize they were essentially treating you like a business investment, right? Right? That evening, I sat in my study, surrounded by copies of every document Patricia had flagged as suspicious. The total wasn't $320,000 as I'd initially calculated. When you included the co-signed debts I was still paying, the loans they'd defaulted on, and the credit cards they'd maxed out in my name, the number was closer to $480,000. But as I stared at that figure, I realized something profound. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calculating. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to their crises. I was planning their consequences. 3 days passed in blissful silence. No calls from Amanda begging for grocery money. No texts from Josh about unexpected car troubles. No manufactured crises requiring my immediate financial intervention. For the first time in years, I woke up each morning without checking my bank balance to see what I could afford to give away. On Thursday morning, the peace was shattered. My phone started ringing at 7:23 a.m. Amanda, I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately. Then again. By the 4th call, curiosity got the better of me. Dad? Her voice was higher than usual, tight with barely controlled panic. Thank God you answered. We have an emergency. Good morning to you too, Amanda. The mortgage payment bounced. Our account was short, and now the bank is charging us fees, and they're saying if we don't cover it by tomorrow, they'll start foreclosure proceedings. We need $3,200 right away. I took a slow sip of my coffee, noting how she'd gone straight to the crisis without even asking how I was doing. That sounds like a serious problem. It is. Dad, we've never missed a payment before. If you could just transfer the money this morning, we can fix this before it gets worse. Amanda, didn't you receive a large tax refund last month? What happened to that money? We had other expenses. Dad, there isn't time to explain everything right now. Can you help us or not? The desperation in her voice was real, but so was the entitlement. 8 years of conditioning had taught her that Daddy's wallet was always open, that every crisis had the same solution. No, Amanda, I can't help you. The silence on the other end stretched for nearly 10 seconds. What do you mean you can't help? You helped us with the house payment last year when Josh's business was slow. That was last year. This is now. Dad, what's wrong with you? This isn't like you. Are you feeling okay? Maybe you should see a doctor. There it was, the implication that my refusal to enable them must be a sign of declining mental capacity. I'd heard variations of this manipulation before, but never so blatantly. My mind is perfectly clear, Amanda. Clearer than it's been in years, actually. But Dad, we're family. Families help each other. You always said that. You're right. Families do help each other. When was the last time you helped me with anything? Another long pause. You never ask for help. You always say you're fine. I'm not talking about money, Amanda. When was the last time you called just to see how I was doing? When was the last time you invited me to dinner at your house? When was the last time you offered to help with my yard work or my grocery shopping or anything at all that didn't involve me opening my wallet? That's not fair. We invite you over all the time. You invite me over to cook dinner for your family and then send me home with an empty wallet and a list of your upcoming expenses. That's not family, Amanda. That's a transaction. I could hear her crying now, but the tears felt calculated, performative. I can't believe you're being so cruel. After everything we've been through together. What exactly have we been through together? Your financial crises that I solved with my retirement savings, your husband's failed business ventures that I funded, your children's expenses that I covered while you took vacations I couldn't afford. Josh's businesses weren't failures. They just needed more time to develop. His restaurant closed after 6 months. His consulting firm never had a single client. His online store sold exactly 3 items before he abandoned it. I gave him $47,000 for those ventures, Amanda. That's not investment, that's charity. Why are you counting every dollar like that? We're family. Because every dollar I gave you was a dollar I couldn't spend on my own health care, my own home repairs, my own future. And you never once asked if I could afford it. You just assumed I could, and you assumed I would. The crying intensified, but now I could hear Josh in the background, coaching her. Tell him about the kids, he was whispering. Tell him the kids need stability. Dad, please, think about the grandchildren. They need stability. They need to know their home is secure. The grandchildren need parents who can support them without exploiting their grandfather. They need to learn that money comes from work, not from manipulating elderly relatives. Elderly relatives? Dad, you're not elderly, you're just being dramatic. I'm 68 years old, Amanda. I worked for 45 years to build a retirement that would last me through whatever health problems might come. You and Josh have been systematically draining that security, and last Sunday night, I found out that you've been counting on my death to solve your financial problems permanently. That's not true. We would never. Josh broke into my house and went through my safe, Amanda. He saw the insurance policies. He saw the documentation of every dollar I've given you. And most importantly, he saw that I changed the beneficiaries to protect my grandchildren from parents who see inheritance as a business plan. The line went quiet except for muffled conversation in the background. When Amanda came back on, her voice had changed. The tears were gone, replaced by something colder. Fine. If that's how you want to be, then don't expect to see your grandchildren anymore. Don't expect Christmas visits or birthday calls or family dinners. We don't need you. Amanda, threats won't change my mind, but I want you to think carefully about what you just said. You're willing to cut your children off from their grandfather because he won't pay your mortgage. What does that tell you about your priorities? It tells me that you care more about money than family. No, Amanda, it tells me that you do. I hung up the phone and turned it off. Patricia had been right. This was textbook financial elder abuse. The demands, the guilt trips, the threats to withhold access to grandchildren, even the suggestion that my mental capacity was declining when I refused to comply. But for the first time in years, I felt something that had been missing from my life: self-respect. I was no longer a victim being systematically drained by people who claimed to love me. I was a strategist with a plan, and Amanda and Josh had no idea what was coming next. Next 2 weeks, my phone didn't ring once. No desperate calls, no manufactured emergencies, no guilt-laden text messages about the grandchildren missing their grandfather. I spent those days rediscovering what retirement was supposed to feel like, reading books I'd bought but never had time for, taking long walks in the park, actually enjoying my morning orange juice. Then I received a call from my lawyer's office that changed everything. Mr. Morrison, this is Janet from Margaret Chen's office. We've received some unusual paperwork that we need to discuss with you immediately. Can you come in today? An hour later, I sat in Margaret's conference room, staring at documents that made my blood run cold. Someone had filed a petition with the county court claiming I was mentally incompetent and requesting emergency guardianship over my affairs. The petition was filed by your daughter Amanda, Margaret explained, her voice tight with anger. She's claiming you've shown signs of dementia, that you're making irrational financial decisions, and that you're a danger to yourself. That's insane. I just had a full medical evaluation 2 weeks ago. I know. But here's what's really troubling. She's provided what appears to be medical documentation supporting her claims, alleged reports from Dr. Patterson suggesting cognitive decline. Margaret handed me the papers. The letterhead looked authentic, but I knew immediately the documents were forged. Dr. Patterson had given me a clean bill of health just days ago. She's also filed for emergency power of attorney, claiming you're in crisis and unable to make rational decisions about your finances or health care. Can she do this? If the court believes her evidence, they could freeze your accounts pending a competency hearing. The scary thing is, she's done her homework. These forgeries are sophisticated. I studied the fake medical reports more carefully. They weren't crude home computer jobs. These had been professionally created, complete with fabricated test results and detailed psychological evaluations that painted me as a confused, paranoid old man losing his grip on reality. Margaret, this isn't desperation. This is a calculated legal assault. It gets worse. I made some calls after receiving these documents. Amanda has been systematically contacting your doctors, your bank, even your insurance company, laying groundwork for this petition. She's been building a case for months. The scope of the deception was staggering. While I'd been congratulating myself on cutting off financial support, Amanda had been orchestrating a legal takeover of my entire life. She also filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services, Margaret continued, claiming you're living in unsafe conditions, that you're not eating properly, that you're neglecting your medical care. When is the hearing? Next Friday. She requested emergency status, claiming you're in immediate danger. That evening, I sat in my study processing the magnitude of what Amanda had attempted. This wasn't just about money anymore. She was trying to have me declared legally incompetent so she could seize control of my assets, my medical decisions, my entire existence. But Amanda had made one critical error in her sophisticated plan. She'd assumed I would be blindsided, that I wouldn't discover her legal maneuvering until it was too late to respond effectively. I spent the next 3 days working with Margaret to build a counterattack. We gathered my recent medical records, financial statements proving my competency, testimony from neighbors and friends, and most damning of all, we hired a forensic document examiner who confirmed that Amanda's medical reports were elaborate forgeries. We also discovered something else. Amanda had been working with a lawyer who specialized in emergency elder care interventions, essentially a legal predator who helped adult children gain control over their parents' assets through manipulated competency proceedings. The night before the hearing, my phone rang. It was Amanda, and for the first time in weeks, her voice carried no pretense of concern or manipulation. She sounded confident, almost smug. Dad, I know you're upset about the court thing, but this is really for your own good. You haven't been thinking clearly lately, and Josh and I are worried about you. Amanda, I know about the forged medical documents. A pause. I don't know what you're talking about. I know about the fake reports from Dr. Patterson. I know about the lawyer you hired. I know about the systematic campaign you've been running to have me declared incompetent. Dad, you're being paranoid again. This is exactly why we need the court's help. I also know this has nothing to do with concern for my welfare and everything to do with gaining control of my assets. That's ridiculous. We love you. We're trying to protect you. Amanda, tomorrow in court, you're going to learn something important about your father. You think you're dealing with a confused old man who won't fight back. Instead, you've picked a legal battle with someone who spent 45 years in business learning how to outmaneuver people exactly like you. Dad, you don't understand. No, Amanda. You don't understand. See you in court. As I hung up the phone, I realized that Amanda's sophisticated legal gambit had given me something invaluable: documented evidence of criminal fraud in a public forum to expose the systematic financial abuse I'd endured for years. She'd escalated our family dispute into a legal war, but she had no idea she was about to face an opponent who'd been quietly preparing for this moment since the night Josh broke into my safe. The courthouse waiting area felt like a battlefield. Amanda sat across from me with her lawyer, a thin man in an expensive suit who specialized in what he euphemistically called elder care interventions. She kept glancing at me with a mixture of pity and condescension, clearly believing this was just a formality before gaining control over my life. Josh wasn't there. Smart move on their part. His presence might have reminded the judge about the life insurance break-in that started this whole mess. Your Honor, Amanda's lawyer began when we were called. My client has grave concerns about her father's mental capacity and his ability to manage his affairs. As you can see from the medical documentation we've provided, Mr. Morrison is exhibiting clear signs of cognitive decline. He laid out their case methodically. The forged reports showing memory loss, fabricated incidents of confusion, manufactured evidence of self-neglect. Amanda had prepared well, I had to give her that. My client seeks emergency guardianship to protect her father from further harm and to ensure his medical and financial needs are properly managed. When it was Margaret's turn, she stood with the calm confidence of someone holding a royal flush. Your Honor, we have several issues to address regarding this petition. First, I'd like to submit actual medical records from Dr. Patterson's office, including cognitive tests administered just 2 weeks ago, showing Mr. Garane Morrison's mental capacity is well above average for his age group. The judge examined the real medical documents while Amanda's face slowly paled. Second, we've had the medical reports submitted by the petitioner examined by a forensic documents specialist. Margaret handed over the expert's analysis. These documents are sophisticated forgeries. Dr. Patterson has confirmed he never wrote these reports and never treated Mr. Morrison for any cognitive issues. Amanda's lawyer began frantically whispering to her, but Margaret wasn't finished. Third, Your Honor, we believe this petition is part of a systematic pattern of financial elder abuse that has been ongoing for several years. With the court's permission, I'd like to present evidence of this pattern. The judge leaned forward, clearly intrigued. Proceed. Margaret laid out the financial timeline with surgical precision. Every loan that was never repaid, every emergency that coincidentally arose when Amanda needed money. The progression from small requests to major financial decisions, the insurance policy manipulations, the timing of the guardianship petition immediately after financial support was withdrawn. Your Honor, the petitioner has documented a systematic extraction of over $480,000 from her father over the past 8 years. When he finally refused further financial support, she immediately initiated this legal action using forged medical documents. The judge's expression had shifted from neutral to deeply troubled. But there's more, Your Honor. 3 weeks ago, my client discovered that the petitioner and her husband had been attempting bank fraud. Margaret presented the documentation of Amanda's attempted power of attorney forgeries. Furthermore, we have evidence that this guardianship petition is part of a coordinated effort involving multiple fraudulent activities designed to gain control over Mr. Morrison's assets. Amanda was no longer looking confident. Her lawyer was shuffling through papers, clearly realizing his client had lied to him about the circumstances. Your Honor, Margaret continued, Mr. Morrison would like to address the court directly. I stood up, feeling calmer than I had in years. Your Honor, my daughter is a smart woman. She's also a criminal who has been systematically robbing me for years while pretending to love me. This guardianship petition isn't about protecting me. It's about legalizing theft. I looked directly at Amanda, who was now crying. Real tears this time, not the manipulative performance I'd grown accustomed to. Amanda, you made one critical mistake in your plan. You assumed that because I loved you and supported you financially, I was weak. You confused kindness with stupidity, generosity with vulnerability. The judge interrupted. Mr. Morrison, do you wish to press criminal charges regarding the document forgery and attempted fraud? Yes, Your Honor. I also want to ensure that my daughter and her husband never have any legal authority over my affairs, my medical decisions, or my assets. Amanda finally spoke, her voice cracking. Dad, please, I was just trying to help. We were worried about you. No, Amanda, you were worried about my money. There's a difference. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. The guardianship petition was denied with prejudice. The forged documents were turned over to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. A restraining order was issued preventing Amanda and Josh from contacting me or coming near my property, but I wasn't finished. As we left the courtroom, Margaret handed Amanda's lawyer a thick envelope. Civil lawsuit for financial elder abuse, fraud, and emotional distress. We're seeking full restitution of the $480,000 plus punitive damages. Amanda's lawyer looked sick. This could bankrupt them. That's the point, I said quietly. Outside the courthouse, Amanda caught up to me, her mascara streaked down her face. Dad, wait, please. We can work this out. I'll pay you back. We can fix this. I stopped and turned to face her. For a moment, I saw my little girl again, the one I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, walked down the aisle at her wedding. But that little girl had grown into someone who saw her father as nothing more than an ATM with a heartbeat. Amanda, the money was never the real problem. The problem was that you stopped seeing me as your father and started seeing me as your victim. That's not something you can pay back. But what about the kids? What about Christmas and birthdays and family dinners? You already told me I wouldn't see my grandchildren anymore unless I paid your mortgage. You made that choice, not me. I was upset. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. And now you have to live with the consequences. As I walked away, I heard her calling after me, making promises she'd never keep, offering compromises I'd never accept. But for the first time in 8 years, her voice held no power over me. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a glass of orange juice, watching the sunset paint my garden in gold. My phone was off, my bank accounts were secure, my house was mine again. The next day, Frank Rodriguez called with an update on his own situation. I took your advice, he said. Filed charges against Michael and cut off all financial support. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But you were right. Sometimes love means saying no. How are you holding up? Better than I expected. Turns out I have a lot more friends than I realized once I stopped being everyone's personal banker. And you know what? I'm actually enjoying my retirement for the first time in years. That evening, after the court hearing, I sat on my back porch with a glass of orange juice, processing everything that had happened. The weight I'd been carrying for 8 years, the constant anxiety, the financial stress, the nagging feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with my family dynamic, had lifted completely. For the first time in nearly a decade, I felt like myself again. The house seemed different too, as if Amanda and Josh's legal defeat had somehow cleansed the space of their manipulative presence. I walked through each room, seeing my belongings with new eyes. The expensive television I'd bought for family gatherings could now be enjoyed for my own entertainment. The kitchen island I'd built with my own hands was mine to use as I pleased, not a staging area for elaborate dinners designed to soften me up for the next financial request. I pulled out my phone and called Frank Rodriguez. How did it go? He asked immediately. Complete victory. The judge saw right through their forgeries. They're facing criminal charges, and I'm filing a civil suit for full restitution. Frank was quiet for a moment. How do you feel? Lighter, like I can finally breathe again. I paused, looking out at my garden. Frank, I've been thinking about something you said, about how cutting off financial support made you realize how many real friends you actually had. Yeah? I think I've been so focused on being needed by Amanda and Josh that I forgot what it felt like to be genuinely wanted by people. There's a difference between someone calling because they enjoy your company and someone calling because they need your checkbook. That's the hardest lesson to learn. We want to believe that family love is unconditional, but sometimes the conditions are just hidden better. The next morning brought a call from Margaret Chen with an update on the legal proceedings. Amanda's lawyer contacted me this morning. They want to negotiate a plea deal to avoid jail time. The district attorney is willing to consider it if they make full restitution and complete significant community service. What do you think? I think they're finally understanding that this isn't a game anymore. Actions have consequences, even for family members who thought they were immune to accountability. That afternoon, as I was working in my garden, actually enjoying it instead of worrying about whether I could afford new plants, I received an unexpected visitor. Sarah, Josh's sister, appeared at my gate looking nervous but determined. "I owe you an apology," she said without preamble. "I should have seen what my brother and Amanda were doing to you. As a social worker, I should have recognized the signs of financial elder abuse." I invited her in for coffee, and we talked for over an hour. Sarah revealed that Josh had been borrowing money from other family members using similar manipulation tactics, and that the court case had opened everyone's eyes to his pattern of behavior. "Amanda called me last night," Sarah said. "She's still trying to paint herself as the victim in all this. She genuinely doesn't understand why you won't just forgive and forget." "What do you think about that?" "I think you're teaching her something she should have learned a long time ago, that love doesn't mean enabling someone's worst behaviors, that real families have boundaries, not just unlimited access to each other's resources." As Sarah left, she turned back to me. "I want you to know that not everyone in Josh's family supported what they were doing. Some of us were relieved when you finally fought back." That evening, I realized something profound about the past few days. The court victory wasn't just about money or legal vindication. It was about reclaiming my identity as someone worthy of respect, rather than just exploitation. For 8 years, I'd allowed Amanda and Josh to define my role in the family as the provider, the problem solver, the emergency fund. I'd accepted my value came from what I could give rather than who I was. The legal battle had forced me to articulate my worth in concrete terms, to demand that others see me as a person rather than a resource. I thought about the grandchildren and felt a familiar pang of loss. But for the first time, I also felt clarity about that relationship. Every interaction with them had been filtered through Amanda's financial needs. Every hug had been followed by a request for money. Every "I love you, Grandpa" had been performed in service of their parents' manipulation. Maybe someday, when they're older, they'll seek me out independently, and we can build a relationship based on genuine connection rather than financial obligation. Or maybe they won't, and that will be their choice to make as adults. Either way, I finally understand that my worth as a grandfather and as a person isn't measured by how much money I'm willing to spend on people who don't actually value my presence. The most important lesson I've learned isn't about money management or legal strategy or even family boundaries. It's about the difference between being loved and being used, between being valued and being exploited, between being someone's father and being someone's victim. I spent 8 years confusing financial generosity with emotional connection, mistaking dependency for love, enabling manipulation because I was afraid of loneliness. Now I know that any relationship you can lose by setting healthy boundaries wasn't really a relationship worth having. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete peace about my choices. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, but it wouldn't bring the anxiety of wondering how much money I'd need to give away to earn love that should have been freely given. For the first time in almost a decade, I was going to sleep as myself, not as Amanda's ATM, not as Josh's emergency fund, not as anyone's financial solution. Just as a man who had finally learned that the most loving thing you can sometimes do is to stop giving people what they want and start giving them what they need: consequences, boundaries, and the opportunity to become better human beings. That's a lesson worth every penny it cost me to learn.